Hey there, how you doing? It is I, the Terrific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to Retro Horror School. If you like hearing about horror from the 1970s to the 2010s, if you like learning about horror concepts, taking part in horror discussions, and listening to horror movie reviews and retrospectives, then click that subscribe button because I put out new YouTube videos every Friday at 2 p.m. Central. 1970s horror was pivotal in the development of future movies in the horror genre and laid the groundwork for a lot of tropes that you now see in modern horror movies today. Whatever your thoughts or feelings are on tropes, whether they're overused or whether they still have their place, in this video, I am going to discuss three major tropes that you often see in 1970s horror films and why in particular they connected with the audience of that time. Here we go. Slashers and the slasher killer. To put this in historical context, in 1969, you had Charles Manson and the Manson family killings, which took place in the very late 60s, 1969 to be exact. So you had all these news headlines that touted these killings and that people were not safe in their own home. So once the Manson family was very safely locked up and behind bars, a lot of 70s horror movies played on those fears of home invasion, of not being safe in your own home, even from a senseless killer. Now, a lot of people disagree about what the first slasher movie really is. Some say it's Psycho, others say it's Black Christmas, some say it's The Town Dread Sundown, and others say that it's Halloween. Whatever your thoughts are on that. Slasher killers were key tropes in 1970 horror films. Slashers, movies like Halloween, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, all those movies featured the unstoppable mass killer who loved picking off their victims one by one. And because of all the fear of home invasion, and if you were even safe in your own home, it's no wonder that slashers and slasher killers were a big trope during that time, and people would flock to those movies just as an escape from real world tensions. Satanic and occult storylines. Another common trope that you will see in 1970s horror films is the use of religion, Satanism, and the occult. So as a little context and backstory, you had what was called a production code, which was in effect until about 1968. It was a big long list of do's and don'ts for horror movies. The MPAA rating system as we know it today replaced that. Because now people had this whole new rating system to work with, of course, what are they going to do? They're going to push the boundaries. And of course, you would still have religious leaders who would speak out against these kinds of movies and be like, ban, they are bad. So if you had a banned sticker or image placed on your poster that had to do with a religious horror movie, it was considered a badge of honor in a way. The reason why you see a lot of religion in horror movies and things about Satanism and the occult, it was a way of getting back as what they saw, this oppressive institution. And a lot of movies had confrontations with the devil himself, which also kind of poked the bear. So you have movies like 1973's The Exorcist, which dealt with the fear of demons and hell. The Wicker Man, also made in 1973, which dealt with a whole different religion altogether, folk religion. And of course, you had The Omen in 1976, which dealt with the devil child. And these kinds of tropes in movies really touched on the real fears that people had of the demise of religion and Satanism and the occult. Those movies touched on those really real fears that people had at the time. Exploitation and grindhouse horror. So if you remember just a few minutes back when I was talking about the MPAA rating system, well, exploitation and grindhouse films were a direct result of that. You had the production code again, which was pretty much a big list of big no-nos. And then you had this rating system, which was relatively new. And people were like, let's see how far we could push the boundaries. So what are exploitation and grindhouse films? Exploitation films are films that directly capitalize on things like violence, gore, drugs, sex, and nudity because they know the audience, or the audience they're marketing to, wants to see these kinds of things. And grindhouse films are the sleazy, well, supposedly like sleazy theaters, city theaters that like to show these kinds of exploitation films on almost a continuous loop or basis. And grindhouse films also have a lot of gore and violence and nudity in them. So you have films like I Spit on Your Grave and The Last House on the Left, which reflected very viscerally the fear of violence enacted upon women. And even films have, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, have a bit of an exploitation kind of feel to it, because it definitely pushed the boundaries in terms of gore and blood and violence. And all of those films kind of in a way felt taboo to people, like, oh my God, we're seeing all these films with a lot of blood and violence and gore in them. And in a way, it was a way to escape again from the realities of the world, because when you're seeing a film that has a lot of gore and exploitative stuff in it, it's strangely enough, it was a bit of an, and is a bit of an escapism from the world. Because like, oh, the world's crappy, so I can watch a movie that has these kinds of things in it to escape for a little while. So the way I can sum up these 70s tropes is a lot of very in-your-face tropes, like a bit of a punch in the face tropes that reflected the 70s overall fear and unease at a lot of global and even just national situations. These tropes that are still enduring today stemmed from these very real tensions, which cements the 70s as a game-changing time for horror. Until you get to the 80s, which also is a game-changing time for horror, but that is another video. So what 70s horror trope do you think defines the genre? It could be one that I listed in this video, or it could be one that I didn't discuss. Let me know in the comments below. Class is dismissed, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye!